Another test. Sophia had anticipated this. A small region near the Swiss-French border. My father prefers to keep our business interests discreet. How prudent, Eleanor replied, though her tone suggested she found nothing prudent about it at all. And what brings you to our little corner of the world? Before we jump to the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. Now the story. The Inheritance Game. Chapter 1. The Proposition. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the Blackwood mansion as Sophia Chen adjusted her black cocktail dress one final time. She'd spent her last $40 on it at a consignment shop, but under the warm glow of the foyer's lighting, it looked like it belonged in this world of old money and older secrets. "You're sure about this plan?" her roommate Maya had asked that morning, worry creasing her brow. "These people aren't like us, Soph. They'll eat you alive." Sophia had simply smiled, the same smile she'd perfected during her years waiting tables while putting herself through business school. They think they know what they're dealing with. That's their first mistake. Now, standing in the opulent entrance hall of the Blackwood estate, Sophia felt the weight of her carefully constructed lies settling around her like armor. According to the invitation clutched in her manicured hand, an invitation she'd acquired through means she preferred not to examine too closely. She was Sophia Laurent, recently returned from studying abroad in Switzerland, daughter of a minor European industrialist family. The truth was far less glamorous. She was Sophia Chen, 26 years old, daughter of a factory worker and a woman who'd abandoned them both when Sophia was 12. She'd clawed her way through state school on scholarships and sheer determination, graduating with an MBA and a mountain of debt that seemed to grow no matter how many extra shifts she picked up at the upscale restaurant where she worked. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, she was here for one reason: Alexander Blackwood. The man himself appeared at the top of the grand staircase as if summoned by her thoughts. At 32, Alexander Blackwood was everything the gossip magazines claimed: tall, dark-haired, with the kind of aristocratic features that belonged on magazine covers. His tuxedo fit him perfectly, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean frame that spoke of expensive personal trainers and weekend sailing trips. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Deep green, intelligent, and currently studying her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken despite herself. "You must be Miss Laurent," he said, descending the stairs with fluid grace. "I don't believe we've met." He extended his hand, and when she took it, she felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with her carefully laid plans. His grip was firm, warm, and he held her hand just a fraction longer than propriety demanded. "Mr. Blackwood," she replied, allowing a slight European accent to color her words. "Thank you for the invitation. Your home is magnificent. Please call me Alexander, and you must tell me about Switzerland. I spent some time in Gstaad last winter. Perhaps you know it?" The test had begun. Sophia smiled, drawing on the hours she'd spent researching Swiss geography and culture. "Of course, though I prefer Verbier myself. Less crowded, better skiing." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, perhaps, or surprise. A woman of discerning taste. "I'm impressed." Before she could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air like a blade. "Alexander, darling, you're monopolizing our guest." Sophia turned to see a woman approaching them, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, her ice blue dress probably costing more than Sophia's annual salary. This had to be Eleanor Blackwood, Alexander's mother, the woman who'd built the family's reputation on ruthless business practices and strategic marriages. "Mother," Alexander said, his voice cooling noticeably. "Allow me to introduce Miss Sophia Laurent. Sophia, my mother. Eleanor Blackwood." Eleanor's smile was sharp as winter frost. "Miss Laurent, how unexpected. We don't often see new faces at our little gatherings." "Mrs. Blackwood," Sophia replied, offering her hand. "I'm honored to be here." Eleanor's grip was brief, dismissive. "Your family name isn't familiar to me? Laurent, you said?" From which part of Europe? Another test. Sophia had anticipated this. A small region near the Swiss-French border. My father prefers to keep our business interests discreet. How prudent, Eleanor replied, though her tone suggested she found nothing prudent about it at all. And what brings you to our little corner of the world? I'm considering some investments in the area. Your son's reputation for business acumen precedes him. Alexander's eyebrows rose slightly. You're interested in business? How refreshing. Most of my mother's guests are more concerned with fashion and philanthropy. Nothing wrong with either, Sophia said carefully. But I've always believed a woman should understand money. How to make it, how to keep it, and how to make it work for her. Eleanor's expression shifted, becoming more predatory. How utterly modern of you. Tell me, dear, what sort of investments are you considering? Perhaps we could discuss it over dinner. I do so enjoy talking business with ambitious young women. Something in her tone made Sophia's skin crawl, but she maintained her smile. I'd be delighted. As they moved toward the dining room, Sophia caught Alexander watching her with renewed interest. Good. Everything was proceeding according to plan. If only she could ignore the way her heart raced whenever he looked at her. Chapter 2. The game begins. The dining room was a study in understated elegance. Crystal glasses that caught the light like captured stars. China so fine it seemed translucent, and enough silverware to outfit a small army. Sophia found herself seated between Alexander and a man introduced as Charles Whitmore, a family friend and business associate whose bloodshot eyes and whiskey-scented breath suggested he'd started his evening early. So, Miss Laurent, Eleanor said from her position at the head of the table, tell us about your family's business interests. I confess I'm curious about these discreet operations you mentioned. Sophia took a sip of wine, a vintage she recognized only from her extensive research, and smiled. My father always said that the best business is conducted in the shadows. We have interests in textiles primarily, though we've branched into technology in recent years. Technology, Alexander mused. That's where the real money is these days. Though I imagine the textile business still has its charms, family tradition and all that. Indeed, though I must confess, I'm more interested in the future than the past. She turned to face him fully, noting how the candlelight played across his features. Your work with Blackwood Industries has been fascinating to follow. The way you've modernized your operations while maintaining your family's core values, it's quite impressive. Alexander's smile was genuine this time. You've done your homework. I make it a point to research any potential business partners thoroughly. Business partners? Eleanor's voice sharpened. How presumptuous. The Blackwood family doesn't simply enter into partnerships with strangers, no matter how charming they might be. Mother, Alexander said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. It's quite all right, Sophia interjected. Mrs. Blackwood is right to be cautious. Trust must be earned after all. Eleanor's eyes glittered. Oh, I do like you, my dear. You have spine. Tell me, what exactly are you proposing? This was it, the moment Sophia had been building toward. She set down her wineglass and met Eleanor's gaze directly. I'm proposing a partnership that could benefit us both. My family has been looking for opportunities to expand our American operations, and Blackwood Industries has the infrastructure and reputation we need. In return, we can offer significant capital investment and access to European markets. And what sort of capital investment are we discussing? Charles Whitmore asked, his words slightly slurred. Sophia had prepared for this question. $50 million initially, with the potential for additional investment based on performance. The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander's fork stopped halfway to his mouth, and Eleanor's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. $50 million, Eleanor repeated slowly. That's substantial. My father doesn't believe in half measures, Sophia replied smoothly. When we commit to something, we commit fully. Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying her. That's a generous offer, Miss Laurent. Almost too generous. What's the catch? Smart man. Sophia felt a flicker of genuine admiration. No catch. Simply good business. Your company has been struggling with the transition to digital markets. Your stock price reflects that. You need capital for modernization, and we need a foothold in the American market. It's mutually beneficial. Our stock price, Eleanor said icily, is a temporary fluctuation. The Blackwood name has weathered far worse storms than a few quarters of disappointing earnings. Of course, Sophia agreed, but even the strongest ships need proper navigation to reach safe harbor. The metaphor hung in the air like a challenge. Eleanor's smile turned predatory. How poetic. And what makes you think you're qualified to navigate our ship, as you put it? I have an MBA from Wharton and 5 years of experience in international business development, Sophia replied, sticking as close to the truth as possible. She did have the MBA, though she'd gotten it from a state school, not an Ivy League institution. I've successfully managed 3 major acquisitions in the past 2 years alone. Another lie, but delivered with such confidence that even she almost believed it. Impressive, Alexander said, though I'd be curious to know more about these acquisitions. Due diligence, you understand. Naturally, though I'm sure you'll understand that some details must remain confidential until papers are signed. Eleanor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, you are good, aren't you? Dangling the carrot while keeping the stick hidden. I respect that. I prefer to think of it as maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. Professional boundaries, Eleanor mused. Yes, boundaries are so important, aren't they? They keep us safe, keep us from making mistakes. Something in her tone made Sophia's stomach clench, but she maintained her composure. I couldn't agree more. The conversation continued through the remaining courses, touching on everything from European politics to American business practices. Sophia found herself genuinely enjoying the intellectual sparring, particularly with Alexander, who proved to be as intelligent as he was attractive. It was only when dessert was served that Eleanor dropped her bombshell. You know, Miss Laurent, I've been thinking about your proposal, and I believe we should discuss it further. Why don't you stay the weekend? We have plenty of room, and it would give us time to explore this opportunity properly. Sophia's pulse quickened. This was better than she'd hoped. That's very generous of you, but I wouldn't want to impose— Nonsense. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. I insist. Alexander, surely you agree that we should give Miss Laurent's proposal the attention it deserves? Of course, Alexander said, though something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with his mother's suggestion. If you're amenable, Sophia, I'd be happy to show you around the estate tomorrow. We could discuss the specifics of your proposal in more detail. I'd like that very much, Sophia replied, meaning it more than she should have. As the evening wound down and she was shown to a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment, Sophia allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Phase 1 of her plan was complete. She was inside the Blackwood Fortress, had gained their interest, and had secured time to work her way deeper into their world. But as she stood at the window, looking out over the moonlit gardens, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. Eleanor's invitation had been too easy, too convenient. And the way Alexander had looked at her during dinner, it wasn't just attraction she'd seen in his eyes. It was something more complex, more dangerous. Suspicion. Chapter 3. Secrets in the Garden. Sophia woke to sunlight streaming through silk curtains and the distant sound of ocean waves. For a moment, she forgot where she was, luxuriating in the Egyptian cotton sheets and the kind of deep sleep that only came with expensive mattresses and the absence of financial worry. Then reality crashed back, and she remembered the game she was playing. After a quick shower in the marble bathroom, complete with a bathtub that could easily accommodate 3 people, she dressed in the designer outfit she'd carefully selected for day 2 of her performance. Today called for casual elegance, tailored slacks, a silk blouse, and a blazer that suggested business acumen without being too aggressive. A soft knock at her door interrupted her final preparations. She opened it to find a young woman in a black uniform holding a silver tray. "Good morning, Miss Laurent. Mrs. Blackwood asked me to bring you breakfast and to tell you that Mr. Alexander will meet you in the garden at 10 o'clock for your tour." "Thank you," Sophia said, accepting the tray. "What time is it now?" "9:30, miss." Perfect. Just enough time to eat and mentally prepare for her next performance. The breakfast was like everything else in the Blackwood world. Perfect and expensive. Fresh fruit, artisanal pastries, coffee that probably cost more per pound than most people made in a day. Sophia ate mechanically, her mind focused on the task ahead. She found Alexander in the rose garden, dressed in khakis and a white button-down shirt that made his green eyes even more striking. He was examining a climbing rose with the kind of attention most people reserved for fine art. "Good morning," she said, approaching him with what she hoped was the right balance of friendliness and professional distance. "Sophia?" He turned, his smile warm and genuine. "I hope you slept well. This particular rose has been in my family for 3 generations. My great-grandmother planted it herself." "It's beautiful," she said, and meant it. The rose was a deep crimson, its petals perfectly formed despite the early autumn season. "You maintain the gardens yourself?" "Some of them. I find it centering. There's something honest about working with your hands, don't you think?" An interesting observation from a man who'd never worked an honest day in his life, but Sophia simply nodded. "I can see the appeal." They began walking along the gravel paths, Alexander pointing out various features of the estate. The grounds were extensive. Formal gardens giving way to rolling lawns, a tennis court, and in the distance, a stable complex that probably housed horses worth more than most people's homes. "Your family's been here long?" she asked. "Since the 1920s. My great-grandfather built this place when he made his first fortune in steel. Of course, we've diversified since then. Shipping, real estate, technology. Adaptation is key to survival in business." "And in life," Sophia added. "Indeed." He glanced at her sideways. "You speak as if you have experience with adaptation." "Careful. Don't we all? The world changes so quickly now. Those who can't adapt get left behind." "True, though some changes are more voluntary than others." There was something in his tone that made her look at him more closely. "What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing specific. Just that sometimes people reinvent themselves by choice, and sometimes circumstances force it upon them." Her heart skipped a beat. Was he testing her? "I suppose that's true, though I've always believed we are who we choose to be." A comforting philosophy, though I wonder if our choices are ever really our own, or if we're simply products of our circumstances. They'd reached a small gazebo overlooking the ocean. Alexander gestured for her to sit on the bench inside, and she complied, trying to ignore the way the confined space made her hyper-aware of his presence. "Tell me about your childhood," he said suddenly. The question caught her off guard. "My childhood?" "Yes. What was it like growing up in your family? The discreet textile business, the Swiss mountains. It must have been quite different from this." This was dangerous territory. Sophia had prepared a backstory, but the more lies she told, the more likely she was to contradict herself. "It was quiet. My parents valued privacy, education, hard work. Not so different from what you describe here, I imagine." "Were you close to your parents?" "My father, yes. My mother, dot, dot, dot." She paused, surprised by the genuine emotion that crept into her voice. "My mother had her own priorities." "I'm sorry. That must have been difficult." "We all have our crosses to bear." Alexander was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the ocean. "Indeed we do. My mother, for instance, has very strong opinions about the family business. Sometimes I think she loves Blackwood Industries more than she loves her own son." The admission was startling in its honesty. "I'm sure that's not true." "Isn't it?" He turned to face her, and she was surprised by the vulnerability in his expression. My mother has been grooming me to take over the company since I was old enough to walk. Every decision I make, every relationship I form, every breath I take, it's all evaluated through the lens of what's best for the business. That sounds suffocating. It is. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Do you know what it's like to have your entire life mapped out before you're old enough to have an opinion about it? To know that every woman who shows interest in you is really interested in your bank account? The irony wasn't lost on her. I imagine it makes it difficult to trust people. Trust. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. My mother taught me early that trust is a luxury we can't afford. Everyone has an angle. Everyone wants something. The trick is figuring out what they want before they get it. Sophia's mouth went dry. That's a cynical way to view the world. Cynical, perhaps, but effective. He looked at her directly then, his green eyes intense. What do you want, Sophia? The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. For a moment, she considered telling him the truth. All of it. About her real name, her real background, her real reason for being here. But the moment passed, and she fell back on her carefully constructed lies. I want to build something meaningful, a partnership that benefits both our families. And that's all? What else would there be? He studied her for a long moment, then smiled. Nothing, I suppose. Forgive me, I'm not used to people being so straightforward about their intentions. Maybe you need to spend time with different people. Maybe I do. He stood, extending his hand to help her up. Come on, let me show you the rest of the estate. And tonight we'll have dinner with just the two of us. I find I'm curious to know more about the mysterious Miss Laurent. As they walked back toward the house, Sophia felt a growing sense of unease. Alexander was too intelligent, too perceptive. If she wasn't careful, he'd see through her deception before she could accomplish her goal. But what worried her more was the way her heart raced whenever he looked at her. The way she found herself wanting to trust him despite everything she knew about his family. She was walking a tightrope, and below her lay nothing but disaster. Chapter 4. The Truth About Eleanor. That evening, Sophia found herself in Alexander's private study, a room that managed to be both intimidating and intimate. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that looked actually read rather than merely decorative. A fire crackled in the marble fireplace, casting dancing shadows across Persian rugs and antique furniture. Alexander had arranged for dinner to be served here rather than in the formal dining room, a gesture that felt both more personal and somehow more dangerous. Without Eleanor's watchful presence, Sophia felt more exposed, as if her carefully constructed persona might crumble under his undivided attention. "The lamb is excellent," she said, making conversation as they ate. "Mrs. Henderson has been our cook for 15 years. She has a way with herbs that borders on magical." He paused, studying her over his wine glass. "You're nervous." It wasn't a question. "Should I be?" "That depends on what you're nervous about." Before she could respond, the study door opened and Eleanor swept in, elegant in black silk, her silver hair gleaming in the firelight. She moved with the predatory grace of a woman who'd never questioned her right to enter any room she chose. "Don't mind me," she said, settling into a chair by the fire. "I simply couldn't resist joining you for dessert. It's so rare that Alexander brings interesting guests home." "Mother," Alexander said, his voice carefully neutral. "I thought you had plans this evening." "Plans change, darling. Besides, I find Miss Laurent absolutely fascinating. A woman of her caliber deserves our full attention." Something in her tone made Sophia's skin crawl. "You're too kind, Mrs. Blackwood." "Please call me Eleanor. We're practically family now, aren't we? What with this partnership you're proposing?" "I hope we can work something out that benefits everyone," Sophia replied carefully. Eleanor's smile was sharp as a blade. "Oh, I'm sure we can. Though I must confess I did some research after our dinner last night. The name Laurent is quite common in Switzerland, isn't it?" So many families, so many branches. It can be quite difficult to keep track of them all. Sophia's pulse quickened, but she maintained her composure. Yes, it's a rather old family name. Indeed. Though I must say, I had the most interesting conversation with a business associate of mine who's quite familiar with textile operations in the Swiss-French border region. He couldn't place your family at all. Isn't that curious? The trap was springing, and Sophia could feel its jaws closing around her. As I mentioned, my father prefers to keep our operations discreet. We maintain a low profile. How prudent, though one would think that a $50 million investment would require some verification of resources. Surely you understand our position? Of course. I'd be happy to provide any documentation you require. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes glittering with malicious amusement. Would you? How refreshing. Because I took the liberty of having my people look into your background more thoroughly. And do you know what they found? Sophia's blood turned to ice, but she forced herself to remain calm. I'm sure they found exactly what they were meant to find. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, my dear. They found nothing. No Swiss textile family named Laurent with a daughter named Sophia. No European business interests. No $50 million investment fund. Nothing at all. The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia could feel Alexander's eyes on her, could sense his shock and confusion. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling, and she had nowhere to run. However, Eleanor continued, her voice silky with triumph, they did find something else. A young woman named Sophia Chen, age 26, MBA from a state school, currently working as a waitress at an upscale restaurant in the city. A woman with significant student debt and a rather challenging family background. Sophia's hands clenched in her lap, but she forced herself to meet Eleanor's gaze. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? How disappointing. I thought you were more intelligent than that. Eleanor stood, moving to the window. But here's the truly interesting part. I don't care. You don't care? Sophia's voice came out as barely a whisper. Not in the slightest. In fact, I find your deception rather admirable. It takes considerable skill to infiltrate a family like ours, to maintain such an elaborate charade. You've clearly done your homework. Alexander finally spoke, his voice tight with controlled emotion. Mother, what the hell is going on? Eleanor turned back to them, her smile predatory. Language, darling. We have a guest. She moved to stand behind Sophia's chair, placing her hands on the younger woman's shoulders. Miss Chen, may I call you Sophia, has done us a considerable service. She's shown us just how vulnerable our security really is. I don't understand, Alexander said, looking between his mother and Sophia with growing alarm. Oh, it's quite simple. Miss Chen here has demonstrated that our family is susceptible to a particular type of infiltration. Beautiful, intelligent women with hidden agendas. It's a weakness we need to address. Sophia found her voice. What do you want? Want? My dear girl, I want to offer you a job. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Sophia stared at Eleanor, certain she'd misheard. A job? Indeed. You see, the Blackwood family has been dealing with a rather persistent problem. Industrial espionage, mostly. Competitors trying to steal our business secrets. Government agencies poking around in our international operations. We need someone with your particular skill set to help us identify and neutralize these threats. You're talking about corporate espionage, Sophia said slowly. I'm talking about survival, my dear. In our world, information is power, and power is everything. You've proven you can become anyone, convince anyone of anything. Those are valuable skills. Alexander stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Mother, this is insane. You can't seriously be considering... Can't I? Miss Chen has just demonstrated that she can walk into our home, earn our trust, and gain access to our most sensitive information. If she can do it, so can others. The question is, do we want her working for us or against us? Sophia's mind raced. This wasn't how she'd envisioned this conversation going. She'd expected to be thrown out, possibly arrested. She hadn't expected to be offered a job. "And if I refuse?" she asked. Eleanor's smile turned cold. "Then you'll be prosecuted for fraud, identity theft, and attempted extortion. I have enough evidence to put you away for several years. Your choice, my dear." "This is blackmail. This is business, something you claim to understand." Sophia looked at Alexander, hoping to find some sign of support, some indication that he might stand up to his mother. But his expression was closed off, unreadable. Whatever trust she'd begun to build with him was clearly destroyed. "What exactly would this job entail?" she asked. "Various tasks, intelligence gathering mostly. You'd be well compensated, naturally. 6 figures to start, with bonuses based on performance. And you'd maintain your cover as Sophia Laurent. We'll provide all the documentation necessary to make it legitimate." "And if I succeed in whatever tasks you give me?" "Then you'll find the Blackwood family can be very generous to those who serve us well. Fail, however." Eleanor's smile turned predatory. "Well, let's just say that failure is not an option." Sophia felt trapped, cornered like a wild animal. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get out of this house and never look back. But she knew Eleanor wasn't bluffing about the prosecution. She had no choice. "I need time to think about this," she said. "Of course. Take all the time you need. Say 10 seconds. Mother." Alexander's voice was sharp with warning. "What, darling?" "Miss Chen is a practical woman. She understands the situation perfectly." Sophia looked around the room. At the expensive furniture, the priceless artwork, the 2 people who held her future in their hands. She thought about her mounting debt, her dead-end job, her mother who'd abandoned her without a backward glance. Maybe this was her chance. Maybe this was the opportunity she'd been waiting for. "I'll do it," she said quietly. Eleanor's smile was triumphant. "Excellent. I knew you were a sensible girl. Alexander, pour us all some champagne. We have a new family member to welcome." As Alexander moved to the bar, his movements stiff with barely controlled emotion, Sophia caught his eye. For just a moment, she saw something there. Disappointment, betrayal, and something else. Something that looked almost like regret. But then the moment passed, and he was pouring champagne with the practiced ease of someone born to wealth and privilege. "To new beginnings," Eleanor said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings," Sophia echoed, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. She'd gotten what she came for, access to the Blackwood fortune. But as she sipped the expensive champagne and watched Eleanor's satisfied smile, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made a deal with the devil, and the price was going to be higher than she'd ever imagined. This is the end of part 1. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe for notifications on future stories.